Welcome to the tutorial of the Industrial Ecology Data Commons Part 1. The Data Commons is a database with broad scope on process or product, stock and flow related data. We have mined the data from a variety of journal papers, government institutions or industry report to make them accessible to the broader scientific and consulting community in a standardized format and with harmonized classifications. The typical data we cover can be shown here. So there would be time series or bar graphs that have something like 100 or 50 or 500 data points over time or for different sectors. We also have smaller data sets, for example, for process descriptions or trade shares, sector splits, for example, or longer lists like trade data or data that show how different commodities are consumed in different countries. And in our database, each of these data that you see here form a data set, which is an assembly or a collection of individual data that have a common data type and a common context. And we will structure these data in the following way. We will have metadata, which are shown here on the left side. Each data set has a name and an ID. It belongs to a certain type or a certain project. It has a scope and resolution. It is described in terms of a comment or provenance. It has dimensions or aspects showing how the data are described in time and process, material and region and so on. And it has source licensing and submission information. And the actual data are either shaped as lists, where you have the different aspects and then the value in the unit, or they're shaped as table, where the aspects can be in the rows or the columns. And the core vocabulary is defined here. We will use it throughout this tutorial, and it's crucial also to understand the database. When I say data point or data item, I mean the individual number. And those individual number with a common context, like common stock description or sector split, form a data set. And each data set has a data type. It can be a lifetime data, a stock data, population data, process inventory, for example. And the data type needs aspects to be located in the system. The aspects describe the what, when, and where of the data, the semantic metadata. For example, for the stock, we need to say stock of what, so we need a material or a product aspect, the when it was measured, the time aspect, and the where, so a process or region aspect. And each data type has its specific aspect structure. And the aspects are linked to the general system dimensions: time, space, process, materials, chemical elements, scenarios. And for these dimensions, we have classifications like the region list ISO 3166, or a materials list, or a process, an industry list, or a list of building types. And for these classifications, we have lists of the individual items, the individual building types, the individual countries, and each single data point is then linked to individual classification items. So this number, the stock, is for this particular product, this particular process, this particular year. And so the individual labels in the classifications are then used to describe the data points in their respective data sets. So this is a bit about the context of the database, and now let's have a look at the structure of the homepage. Here are some general descriptions, things that we have already explained. And if you want to learn more about the structure of the database, you can unhide some information about the table structure. The core is the data table, where we store all these individual data taken from the data sets, and the data set table, where we define all the data sets. So you could say this is the catalog of data in the IEDC. And we have a number of lookup tables. So each table, each data type is then linked to data types, data layers, to the classification, to the provenance. So many of these things are coded so that we can have unique identifier for the different data types, for example. And the data table is then linked to the individual classification items, individual countries or years or materials, so that we then can, in a search function, go for a single label like steel to all the data sets that have information about steel. We have a workflow for this database. So on the left side, you see how we source the data from their respective publications in PDF, Excel form, or other convenient machine-readable forms. These then are formatted into our templates and validated. This is supported by the IEDC team members, and then they are uploaded to the database itself, which is a MySQL database server with a comprehensive web interface. And from there, we can find the data in different ways. The basic search function I will show you now, and for the advanced search functions, we have a separate tutorial. So let's hide this section again. Because we have an open project here, we offer a lot of resources, journal publications, video lectures, data in their raw form are archived on Zenodo, and we have on this right side all the lookup tables. So if you want to know our units, our different licenses that we can use to describe the data, the different aspects and the classifications, you find it all here. We also have a section for validating data before submission. If you visit this page, you get an extra introduction and tutorial linked here. We have here the navigation for the different search options. If you are looking for data sets by a given keyword type, project, or ID, please stay with me now because this is what I'm going to show you now. We also have advanced search options. For example, what data do you have about indium? What data do you have about Namibia? There is a search function for this that we will look into in a separate tutorial. If you look into data from a specific publication or author, there's also a search function. Or for example, if you want to look for a specific data type in a label, like for example, do you have lifetime data for microwaves, material composition of bicycles? There is also a search function. But for now, we will stick to the main catalog search, which you will find at the bottom of this page. So this here is a part of the data catalog, the data set table with the IDs and data set names, and it's searchable. So we could, for example, search for data on buildings. And the filter will be applied, or we take it without the S. We get 64 data sets that have something to say about buildings, either in their name or their description or keywords. And you see there's per capita process costs, there's yields for buildings, material composition, lifetime, stocks, energy intensity. So all those data sets we would, on data types, we would expect for buildings. So we can check for these types. We can also check for an individual project, like the Circomod project, for example, where we currently have 26 dataset uploaded. We can also filter for an individual data type. So you see the database currently has 37 lifetime data for buildings, electricity, things, appliances, vehicles, motorcycles, wood products. So all of this is available. Let's stick at the moment to the project we've chosen. And for example, we could say something we're interested in machinery. So let's select now the material composition dataset for machinery from this project. If you select a dataset here from this catalog, you're taken to the complete description of the dataset. So this is the one-to-one copy of the data catalog entry. The description, the scope, the aspects, and the metadata provenance, and so on. Some of the datasets have a data group that you see here. So this is the Circomod technology data group that contains different data sets. So they're all linked to this broader data group. And sometimes the data groups also have an overview picture to get you additional information. So here you see the scope of this Circomod project input database, the sectors covered, the data types covered, who contributed, and how many data sets there in total. And now it becomes interesting. The actual data are shown here. So this is an extraction of the data sets that you see here, the name the different aspects. There's data for PV panels, global scope, the materials that are contained. The unit layer is mass per unit. Kilogram per item is the unit and the actual value. So these are the data, and in the comment there's additional traceability information. So this is working. And by the way, each data set has, of course, a certain size, and the size you find here in the data set size attribute in the data catalog. So this data set contains 747 data points on the material composition. Some of them you can see here for your inspection. And now two things can happen. The first is if you say you want to work with this data set, look at it closer, go to the direct download button, and immediately this data set will be available on your machine in your download box in the format explained below, an Excel workbook with a cover sheet and the data set description and a data sheet with all the data in exactly the same structure as you see it here. You can also go to a filtering page. So if you click here, you will be taken to the filter page of this data set. So the IEDC allows you to filter a data set for a given label. So if we now have selected the machinery data set ID 425, we go to the corresponding filtering page. And here, for example, we could ask, do you have data on heat pumps in this data set? And the answer is yes. You see here for the commodity heat pump, global representative data, their material composition for PVC, oil, refrigerant, insulation, steel, copper, and stainless steel. So this filtering, of course, allows you to check whether the data that you specifically are asking for are present in the data set. And if yes, you can go back to the search page and download. If no, you can continue searching further with these different search functions that are then the subject of the second tutorial. Thank you for watching until now.